Welcome to episode 1 of the Single Parenting Staying Sane podcast. My name is Carla-Jo, and I'm a single mum to my beautiful son who is 3, and I'm also a mindfulness teacher. I am fascinated in how we can support our mental and emotional health as single parents, not only so that we can have a deeper sense of well-being ourselves, but also for our children and the rest of the family involved. Last week, I had the privilege and pleasure of talking with Mercedes Corona and Justin Sanseri, who are 2 licensed marriage and family therapists in California. They both currently work for a school district, but also have lots of experience working with parents, especially single parents. And they are also hosts of the Polyvagal podcast. I asked Mercedes and Justin, as I really value their perspective and insights on mental and emotional health. They are very experienced and ooze integrity and compassion. I have learnt so much from them, and I hope you enjoy listening to them as much as I enjoyed chatting with them. During our conversation, we focus on separation and how this commonly affects our emotional and mental health as single parents. We talk about how to manage feelings of grief and guilt. Justin and Mercedes share about the polyvagal theory, what it is, and how it can help us to understand why we are feeling what we are feeling, and how this relates to the thoughts that arise as a result of our bodily states. Understanding this can begin to free us from our sense of suffering. We then go on to talk about how to manage when our children are with the other parent, coping with difficult feelings that arise. And then this turns into a more general conversation on understanding our feelings and emotions as single parents. Take good care of yourself as you listen to this podcast. Listen to it in chunks if you need to. There's a lot in it, and please put yourself first. Have a break, do something that nourishes you, have a cup of tea or chat to a friend. There are links in the description for single parent charities and support groups, also for the Samaritans and Mind, the mental health charity. Please use these if you feel you need them. They are amazing and are professionally trained in how to support you. And finally, if you are interested, I have been inspired to set up some online courses, especially for single parents who would like to cultivate more mindfulness and compassion in their lives, to help them look after their mental health and strengthen their relationships with others. So do get in touch if you'd like to know more about this. So, I really hope you get a lot of value from this first episode, with me in conversation with Justin Sanseri and Mercedes Corona. Welcome, Justin and Mercedes.
Hi.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you so much for joining me today.
Super happy
Of
to.
course. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm just really intrigued about as single parents, how we can support our emotional and mental health, during a time which is often incredibly stressful. Especially we're going to be looking at today people who are sort of going through separation or who have gone through separation in the last couple of years. So it's still fairly new, and there are going to be all sorts of different feelings, emotions that people are experiencing. And I'm a single parent myself, and I've got friends who are single parents, and also sort of aware of the more general population. And people often, are confused, feeling a bit frightened, a bit overwhelmed. There's feelings around, how are my children coping with all of this? It's a biggie. And so today, I wanted to pay a bit more attention to the feelings of guilt and grief and the judgments that can come out of that, maybe feelings of failure, I'm not good enough. And how can we begin to support ourselves, in that moment when they arise? Obviously, it's so important to get professional therapeutic help.
But in that moment when we're feeling a bit, and this is arising, beginning to think about how we can support ourselves in that. And I'm aware that you are both also really passionate about something called the polyvagal theory. So maybe as well as general psychology, we could begin to weave that into what we're talking about as well. So something that really struck me that I thought it'd be a good place to begin with is that I was speaking to a friend on the phone who's a single parent, and she became a single parent about a couple of years ago now. And we were talking about the feeling of grief. And she said to me, I just carry around with me this constant feeling of grief around what has happened and how this is going to affect my children. And she said to me, am I always going to feel like this? Am I always going to, for the rest of my life now, carry around this really heavy feeling of grief? And that really struck me. And I thought, wow, this is such a common feeling for single parents to experience. So this is where I'd like to start. I mean, obviously, in the line of work that you do, this must be something that comes up with the people that you see. What are your thoughts around this?
Yeah. So is it okay if I start, Justin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think the first thing I want to say or ask, I guess, would be to this person, to all the people going through this, is in regards to the feeling of grief, was the separation from the other person necessary for that person's wellness? I'm going to go ahead and assume the answer is yes, because otherwise nobody wants to go through a separation, especially when there's children involved. So assuming that the separation was for the adult's wellness, just their own well-being and mental health, then the feeling of grief for me, it makes sense, because I think part of the feeling of grief is going to be mourning the loss of the ideal that we had in our heads of, when we were kids or whenever, getting married and buying the house and having children. And, so I think part of it is mourning the loss of that ideal. But then as far as feeling it forever, you don't have to feel it forever. I think it's a really normal process to feel grief when you lose this part of a life that you thought you were going to have. It's really, really normal. But then just coming to terms with, and this is going to be the big part right here. This is going to be where a lot of work happens, I think, for a lot of people. But coming to terms with the fact that this is what I needed. I needed to be not with this person in my life. I needed the separation for myself to be well. And that goes back to the thing that we always talk about and we always hear. I need to be well to be available for my children. Because if I'm not well as a mother, I'm not going to be a present mother for my children. And the first thing I'm going to be is present for my children. So it's the domino effect, right? If I want to be there for my kids, I have to be well. If I want to be well, I can't live with this person anymore. I can't share my life with this person anymore. And so kind of coming to terms with that and accepting that will help the grief process kind of move through to the next stage.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Justin?
I do want to talk more in particular about polyvagal theory, and I think the stories component will be really important with this, the narratives. The polyvagal theory is the science of how humans connect, or actually mammals, all mammals, but also how we shift to various levels of danger or life threat. So, just in a very small nutshell here is that there are cues of safety or danger that we can get from other, we'll say, people. And cues of safety would be safe touch, safe gentle eye contact, safe proximity, eye crinkles, smiles, all these tilting your head to the side and smiling or whatever. All of these safe, universally safe cues that people get that help us to feel safe. And then there's cues of danger. And this is a wide range, but basically it could be, if we look away, if our eyes look away while we're talking with someone, there's you feel a shift. You feel like, oh, I just lost something. Cues of danger are flat out, abandonment. Most of the moms, most of the moms I'll say that I've worked with over the past decade or so, a lot of them are single, and it's not exactly by choice. Dads just flat out abandon their children. So yeah, obviously a cue of danger, losing someone that you think you're connected with. And then, so if we feel those cues of danger, we shift in our nervous system. It's not a choice. We shift in our nervous system down to like a flight mode, which doesn't mean we want to run away exactly, but it might feel like anxiety or unsettled or hypervigilance. It could be a lot of different things. And if we can't run away from actual danger, like say there's like actual danger in the world, like you're being mugged or someone's like following you on the street or something like that, your first instinct is to run away. If you can't run away, your body shifts to fight behaviors. And if you can't fight, then your body shifts to this like shutdown, collapse behavior where you just go numb, dissociate, your body just goes limp. And there's another one which is called freeze, which is a combination of being in a really revved up like state where you want to run or fight, but then being immobilized through force, and so that energy gets stuck within you, and you literally like your body freezes up. So I think the important thing when it comes to your audience is that your audience may be in a state of high anxiety or even super high level of depression, which we call shutdown, which is called depression, I think more day to day. People in shutdown are numb. They lack motivation. They're not feeling fulfillment through the things they used to. They may isolate themselves, and this looks exactly like depression. So I think that for your audience, they may be in a state after a huge life change of losing a spouse or partner or whatever happened that is going to affect you on a nervous system level. And not like you're choosing to go through these things. It just happens. But when these things happen, that our thoughts actually change, and then these things pop into our head. These stories pop into our head if it's my fault, or I wasn't good enough, or he was an asshole, excuse me, or a jerk or whatever. So these things pop into our head, which might be true. Maybe he was a jerk. But a lot of these things are shame-based, self-blame based sort of things that aren't necessarily true. And I think what Mercedes brought in, was you may have left someone for your safety or for the safety of your kids, or because it was the best thing that you could have done in your life at that moment. So the reality doesn't always necessarily match the thoughts that we have in our head. And the thoughts that we have in our head are based on the state that our body is in, which is flight, fight, or shutdown pretty much.
And what I really love about this theory is that it helps people to understand that it's not their fault, and that this is a biological process that is happening, which is completely normal, and then the thoughts are a response to that. And I just feel that's so, so important for people to begin to understand. For me anyway, that immediately begins to take away some of the stickiness of what I'm feeling, because then it creates some space. Like, okay, this big feeling's here, but this is normal.
Yeah, there's some validation in it. I think I don't know about everyone, but for myself and for many people I've talked to, there's this sense of validation in it where, I knew I was feeling this for a reason, and I'm not crazy. It's not just me, kind of a thing. And I think that's a big piece of it for me. And one thing, I'm not sure if you said this, Justin, so forgive me if I'm just repeating, but I know one of Justin's favorite phrases is that our brains are meaning-making machines. And so when going back to like the stories and stuff, and how you were saying, Carla-Jo, the stuff is going on, and it's what our bodies are reacting to. It is what it is. But if we don't understand that at that level, that this is a physiological reaction that anyone in the same situation would go through, then our brains will try and make meaning of it. And that's where the stories come in. I deserve this, or I wasn't good enough, or, whatever the story is. And that's where the danger is, I think. The danger is in the stories. And so you're right, again, Carla-Jo, when we talk about the polyvagal theory and how it's essentially a biological response. Your body is responding to this event in your life. It is. That's what it is. It's very normal. And again, the danger is in the stories. And so hopefully that will help people separate themselves a little bit from those stories that aren't always accurate. They can be accurate, but they're usually not.
The stories aren't about reality. It's about why my body just shifted. Like, if I'm in a good place with my spouse and all of a sudden we're splitting up, or what I perceive was a good place or whatever it is, and then now I've lost that, or even if it's a bad relationship and you lose it, there's a level of predictability that you've lost. And that is a cue of danger. If you lose predictability, that's a cue of danger. So your body reacts to that. Life becomes a little bit less safe, or a lot less safe. And so your brain, the meaning making, is not about reality exactly. It's about, I don't feel safe anymore. So your brain's trying to make sense of the shift in your body. All right, because when we drop to these defensive states of flight, fight, or shutdown, it's not a choice, and that it's a biological thing, that our behavior, our thoughts, our breathing, our heart rate changes. Like if you're doing a podcast for the first time and you get nervous, your heartbeat changes, right? Your breathing changes.
Yeah, it
exactly.
Really does.
And it's not a choice. And like these things can happen throughout the day, but with a huge major shift like losing or breaking up with someone, you're going to feel that. You're going to, like, the moment where you decide it is time to break up, or someone leaves you, you feel that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Your body, it like immediately adjust, like it has a reaction to that, and it might be a panic, or increased heart rate, or I want to shut down and hide somewhere and just cry.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's kind of a thing in society where we have this expectation of ourselves that we should be feeling okay all the time. And that when we're not feeling okay, we're like, even if when we're going through a separation and it's been horrendous and really stressful, we move into our new place and we're just feeling rubbish. We still can layer a sense of expectation on that, like, oh, well, I shouldn't be feeling like this. And I think there's so much more education to be done, isn't there?
I would really encourage anyone who's going through that, because you're right. It's not just the split or the abandonment or the breakup or whatever it is. It's not just that. You also, there's moving, there's dealing with custody, visitation, transporting. Like, there's all these layers of change that happen, and every single layer of change is going to be a potential danger cue. And it just piles on. Plus, now on top of that, you're also going to be blaming yourself, like you said, or potentially blaming yourself, or you might be in a fight state and it's all about the other person and how much you hate them. Or it might be, this is too hard for me and I want to just give up. Not that you want to give up, but your body's in a place of, I'm done. I can't handle this. It's too much. I want to just hide and curl up in a corner somewhere.
Yeah. And so where does guilt fit in with all of this then? Is guilt a judgment or a state?
It's not a state. Guilt is feeling like you did something wrong. And shame it's like, I did something bad, so I feel guilty. And that might be real. Like, maybe you did do something wrong. Maybe you were a part of the reason why there was a breakup. And maybe that's an honest truth that you make to yourself. Nothing wrong with that at all. And that's a process you can go through, in forgiveness and apologies and all that stuff. But I would just ask if the guilt is accurate. Like, did you actually do something wrong? Do you actually have something to feel guilty about?
Yeah, something that seems to be common is this a massive feeling around guilt in terms of how this is affecting the children. Oh. And how can you ever get over that? Like, this situation has happened and you're feeling massive guilt in terms of the huge shift that children are having to go through now, having two homes, and the guilt that comes with that. I don't know what your thoughts are in terms of how, maybe Mercedes.
I think it goes back to what Justin was saying is, did you actually do something wrong? Because, again, going back to one of my first thoughts, if this was something that happened, the separation from the significant other, if this is something that happened for your own wellness, I usually speak in the first person. So for my own wellness, if this happened because I needed to be well and I could not share my life anymore with this person, but there was no wrongdoing, like I didn't do anything wrong, then there doesn't need to be guilt. And it makes sense that there will be guilt for the child's sake. I get that. I will also say that I am not a single parent, and so I haven't personally gone through this. But I do get that. But then the flip side is, what would life have been like had you not separated? And so would that life have produced any more wellness or, success as a family? Because I'm going to assume the answer is no, because I don't think people separate and split up from each other just for funsies. I don't think that's why that happens. I think it happens because it's a necessary change in your life. It has to happen, or, more negativity will happen. So I think coming to terms again with the idea that if you did something wrong, you do have to own up to it. But if you didn't do anything wrong, if the guilt is solely about how the children are going to be affected, then I don't know if this is going to sound unhelpful, but I feel like that's a little bit easier, because once you can let go of the idea that you've done something wrong to your children, you haven't. Because being well for yourself, and this is for both you and the ex, whoever, ex-spouse or ex-whoever, if you're both well in a positive mental wellness place, that is what's going to be helpful to the children. Because it doesn't matter how many homes they have. It doesn't matter if there's 2 or 3 or 4 homes. If the people who live in each of those homes are well within themselves and can treat each other well, but I know I'm using the same word like 16 times, but they can treat each other kindly and with respect, that's what's going to matter for raising the children.
Yeah.
And so guilt doesn't have to be a part of that equation.
That's so powerful. So I guess there's a lot of around sort of acceptance there, and yeah, just really tuning into the fact that this is happening because of ultimately for my long-term well-being, and that if I can just accept this. And
for everybody's long-term well-being. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you up, but for everybody, because the children are going to suffer too.
Yeah.
If the family unit stays intact, but it's really negative and hostile and toxic.
Yeah.
So it's for everybody's well-being.
Yeah. So once you can begin to sort of see it like that, again, not get lost in sort of stories which aren't helpful, but really see it as it is. And then you can begin to shift away and move from feeling that sense of guilt.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be easy. And I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, all you have to do is accept it. No, it's going to be difficult. I mean, there's going to be personal feelings involved aside from parental feelings. There's going to be, man and woman stuff, whatever the type of relationship you were in, you're going to feel your feelings that have nothing to do with being a parent. And that's going to be difficult to get through. But if both parties can agree that now that we're past the relationship stage, we've dismissed that, we're done with it, let's just focus on the parenting stage and just really be respectful and kind to each other. That's what's going to bring wellness for the whole family, for everybody involved. And again, it is really difficult. It's not an easy task, but staying focused on that idea will help.
Yeah. Thank you, Mercedes. Any thoughts, Justin?
I have more curiosity. I'm really curious about the word guilt. And if this was like a therapy session, I'd probably hear the person out and really kind of process that and like tease apart this and that. But I'm really curious, is that, and I'm not a single parent, but to me it's like guilt. Okay, so my question would be like, well, what did you do wrong? And if there's nothing you can identify you did wrong, so it's like, well, is guilt the right word? Is it more shame? Is it more?
Do you know what actually?
Is it more of like a feeling of like failure? Like I feel like there's more to it than just guilt, because guilt is pretty simple. If you did something wrong, you fix it, you apologize. That's kind of it when it comes to guilt, really. So but it feels like there's a lot more to it than just the word guilt. And I think I'm lacking, like I'm missing something here. You know what I mean?
Do you know what's really interesting? Thank you for bringing that up. Is that as you're speaking about this, I'm like, okay, so I'm reflecting on when I maybe last felt that.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. So yesterday I dropped my son off at his dad's, and he stays with me all week, and then he goes to see his dad at the weekend. And I could just feel like this pit of yuckiness in my gut, because I just felt terrible, because once again, I'm having to take him to his dad's, and we've had a really amazing week together. And then like there's that feeling of like, oh, my poor child. I mean, again, there's a story that I'm telling myself around this, but this feeling of in my stomach as I take my child out and then go and give him to his dad.
I think it's important to recognize the pit in your stomach, and that what that is that's the shutdown response. Like it's down there. That's where it lives. And the flight-fight response is in the chest, like with your heartbeat and whatnot. That's where that lives. And the social engagement system is in your head, heart, neck area, and that's where that lives, right? So when you feel something down there, your body's just like, it's just killing you. Like you want to shut down. It's too much. So to me, in that situation, I'm putting myself in that situation. I'm not a single parent. If I had to say goodbye to my children for a weekend, that would kill me. That would absolutely destroy me. I don't know how I'd get through that. But I don't think it'd be, to me, I'm trying to put myself in a situation, and forgive me if I'm way off base here, but that's not guilt. It's my child is gone for the weekend. And they don't want to. That's going to hurt me even more, honestly. So I feel like guilt is, I'm not doing anything wrong. So tell me if I'm off base here, but that's a lot heavier. That's like, it's a separation from my children. Like that's a huge deal. That's a natural biological, and I'm not a mom either. So I think I'm assuming it's bigger for moms. But as a mom saying goodbye to her children for a couple of days when you don't want to, that's gotta be hard.
Yeah. Do you know what? Thank you so much for naming that, Justin, because you're so right, actually.
It's your child. It's
yeah.
It is. I hadn't thought of it that way either. And again, I mean, Justin and I keep saying it, but I'm not a single parent either, but I'm a parent, and just sometimes letting go of my children overnight, like that was hard for me with the first couple times when my husband and I wanted to, go away for a weekend or something. That's hard. And they were just staying with my parents or his parent,
yeah.
They weren't in danger. They weren't, and again, I think I'm trying to put myself in those shoes, and to compound it by, leaving your child with the person that just made you so miserable. And I'm assuming this of all people, not you specifically, Carla-Jo, but just single parents in general. There's so much personal history between the two of you, and then to let go of your child for 2 days, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's gut-wrenching.
And then obviously there's the feelings around, well, then I have absolutely no control over what's
what
going
happens
on with that other parent, or what they're doing, or they've just gone for 2 days. And, so wow, there's bound to be, it's natural to have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're attached to your children, they're attached to you, and now you're in a situation where you have to say goodbye for a set amount of time. I don't know. I'm not hearing guilt. I'm hearing attachment, healthy attachment. I'm hearing love, and having to being forced to say goodbye for a weekend. Oh my God.
Yeah. So just to sort of go a bit deeper into this then. So, when obviously this is a common theme for single parents, and again, I've seen this talked about too, is, then when they have disappeared like that for, that amount of days, how best do we look after ourselves? Like, how do we bring ourselves, maybe using polyvagal language, back up what's called the ladder? So you have these 3 different stages, and coming out of maybe feelings of shutdown, so that, there's not just a pit of overwhelm. Do you have any thoughts around that?
I'm stuck on your use of the word disappear. You said that they disappear for the weekend? Right? That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
And
and that's what it feels like.
Right. It speaks to it's like you have this attachment that's being severed for the weekend. It's being cut off. That's not how parents function. Like, that's our biological attachment to this person, that our child is being cut off for the weekend, and it feels like they're just gone. They've disappeared. Oops, I hit my mic. It just feels like they've disappeared. So your use of the word disappear really stuck out to me there. Sorry if that was off to the side there.
I'm gonna cut in now too, and I'm distracted by something else. So just to be clear, I do want to actually answer your question about self-care.
Yeah.
But I'm distracted by something else, which is this I think is one of the biggest reasons that it's important to, I don't know how corny or terrible this is going to sound, but it's important to work with your ex to be parents together, because I my heart is dropping into my stomach listening to you. I'm putting myself in your shoes. The thing that kept on going through my head while you were talking is this is why the relationship between the two adults still needs to be healthy and well as much as possible. And again, I know this sounds unrealistic, and maybe some people listening to the podcast are thinking like, oh, no way, this is never going to happen. But look, the reality is we should really be rooting for that person, because I don't want to use you as an example. So I'll just use like a general single parent. So it's a single parent out there. If a single mother can root for her ex to be successful as a parent and to be a great father or mother or whoever, to do their best. And so that when I, as a single parent, am dropping my kid off for the weekend, I know they're going to be safe and healthy and well and smiling when I pick them back up again. That is the best scenario. And so again, I'm just imagining the people listening in the car or at home, like, not going to happen. But in reality, that other person is half of your child's identity. This is something that I was taught a long time ago when I called myself a baby clinician back then. We as parents, we share, our children have half of each parent inside of them. And so for one parent to deny the other parent, so to speak, to not root for the other parent and to say, oh, that your dad or your mom is a terrible blah, 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 that is denying that child half of their identity every single time. And so it would be really important to find a way to root for the other parent and to really hope for success and to support the other parent as much as possible to help them be successful. And going all the way back to, I feel like I've like gone on a crazy tangent.
Before you go back to self-care, I just want to say thank you, because that's so, so important. And sometimes maybe, I guess, just talking from experience, we can become so lost in how we're feeling and how difficult it is for us that we can forget that actually the other parent is feeling, probably very similar feelings of despair and loss. And if we can begin to recognize that, then that can create more of a compassionate space for us to all move through as a family.
Yeah. And hopefully, going back to the word that Justin got stuck on, hopefully when a person drops off their child, I don't want to say you, but hopefully when you drop off your child, it won't feel like they're disappearing, and so you won't feel so heavy and so down. And so this is me segueing back to self-care. And so maybe the self-care won't be quite so desperate. The need won't be so desperate for it.
On a practical level. Yeah. If you can somehow address that on a practical level, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
You said, I forgot what it was you said. I think you used the word despair. You said that if we could keep in mind the other person, that maybe they're going through also despair and loss or whatever, right? But that's when it comes to self-care, that's where you start, is by recognizing where you're at. And it's good to have empathy for the other person as well, absolutely. But you have to start with where you're at. So I think you can tell yourself all these thoughts like, we ended it for the right reasons and my child's safe in their hands. That's great. But your nervous system does not know that. Your nervous system is like, I lost my child. They disappeared. So that's where you start. Like your nervous system is telling you, and these thoughts pop in your head, right? So that's where you start is, I do feel despair. And that's legitimate. I'm allowed to feel that. I'm going to let myself feel that because it's legit. So I don't think the solution when it comes to self-care is to ignore that or to mask it over or to, I don't know, coping with it's fine and all that. But you really have to recognize that you do feel that way. It is real. It is normal. And it's completely okay. So just allow that to happen and allow yourself to feel despair or that pit in your stomach. Like start right there. Start there. If that's where you're at, like it's okay. Start there. And then you can kind of, when it comes to self-care, there's so many paths on how to do that it's hard to say like, just do this thing. But I think in general, when it comes to that shutdown, pit in your stomach sort of place, that a lot of quiet and honestly being alone, I think is okay. Being with friends is a good way to cope. But if you need some alone time and some quiet time, like that's totally okay as well. So you start there and allow your body to be still and to be sad if it needs to be sad.
And cry if you need to cry.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's an obvious thing to say, but I feel like it's not. I feel like kind of going back to some of the guilt and shame stuff, I think there is a belief, especially for mothers, but I think for either gender of parent, but I think there's a belief of I'm going to stay strong. I'm going to get through this. I don't need to cry, et cetera, et cetera. But like Justin is saying, feel where you're at, really exist in that state, whether it's shut down or fight or flight, and really experience it. And if that means tears are coming out, then tears are coming out. And that's part of the process. And that actually helps us get to the next state up the ladder. We want to move up the polyvagal ladder and just experience it. There should be no judgment about it. I shouldn't be crying. I should be bigger than this. I should be better than this. There doesn't have to be any judgment like that. Let the tears flow, and then, or whatever it is, the screaming into the pillow or the screaming not into a pillow, but the punching bag, like an actual punching bag, not a person, but punching if you need to punch or whatever the thing, let it happen, but without the judgment, just with the experience of existing in the feeling and in that moment until it passes, because it will pass.
Yeah. And you know what? I think, thank you for bringing this up. This is really interesting because often there can be some fear around these sorts of big emotions. Yeah. Like when we're feeling like this, we kind of like our mind sort of wants to think its way out of it. And the last thing we might want to do is think, right, okay, I've got to feel and sit in this big feeling of, and as we know, that's, the only way out is in. You've got to go through it to then.
You do.
And so there also seems to be something around there around beginning to learn and have an understanding of recognizing our emotional state, because I think so often we don't even know how we're feeling. So just beginning to learn how we're feeling, recognize the sensations, and then learning to sort of be with them. I'm wondering if that that takes practice, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. It's not an overnight
thing. It does,
thing.
especially for someone who's become so good at denying themselves their genuine feelings. But mothers, again, I'm not excluding fathers, but parents are good at that as far as like, I got to take care of the kids, so I don't have time right now to cry, or I'm going to take care of my child, and so I don't have time to scream and be angry. And sometimes it's a reality of our lives, especially, I assume, as a single parent, because you don't have the other person to fall back on. So yeah, I think feeling your feelings as part of self-care is going to definitely be something to learn if a person isn't already accustomed to doing that.
This is what I'll add to that, though, because so many people are going to be like, well, when I cry, I get angry and I'll start breaking stuff. And I hear that from the people I work with pretty frequently. So it's not, you can't just feel it in an uncontrolled way. You have to be coming from a place where you're really curious and loving, and in a place of non-judgmental, just, love for yourself. And it has to be it's a gentle process. It's not a rageful one. If it feels like rage, let it feel like rage. That's fine. But really, you don't just like uncork it and like go nuts with like rage. And do you know what I mean? Like it's like, this is how I'm going to set aside some quiet time for myself in a safe place, and I'm going to let myself feel that pit in my stomach, and I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to treat it like a new, almost like I lost this relationship. But I'm going to get in touch with my body all over again, and get in touch with myself all over again, and really build a new relationship just with myself. And so I think that we are so cut off between our head and our body. There's like this thing that happens where we get really overconsumed with our thoughts and our shoulds and shouldn'ts and our judgments and whatnot. But we lose contact with what's happening in our gut and in our chest, right? So it's becoming reacquainted with yourself in a very curious, not judgmental, not evaluative way. So curiosity, not evaluation.
Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, that's so important, because if we come at it, it's like, right, I must sit with this feeling, then that's going to create even more layers of judgment and more fear.
It does.
Right.
It does. Feeling we're feeling.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you were saying that, something that was coming into my mind was this idea that Peter Levine talks about. Peter Levine is an amazing psychotherapist and expert on trauma and especially body awareness for people who aren't aware of him. And, something that he talks about in terms of when we're learning to be with these feelings is pendulation. So learning to find an area in your body which feels safe and secure and maybe pleasant, and so that you can move between the two to stop you feeling feelings of overwhelm around maybe the feeling of, say, shame in your body. So that maybe as, having a very safe space, feeling safe, and then becoming aware of feelings of safety in the body and learning what those are and then moving between them.
Pendulation, from what I understand, is the ability to kind of go, well, it's like a pendulum. You kind of go back and forth. That there will be some difficult things, but then to swing back into a place that feels safe and then back into the difficult things. So it's like a back and forth rhythm. I believe that's similar to what Deb Dana with her rhythm of regulation, that we don't always exist in a safe and social place. That's not realistic. The goal is to be able to go from a difficult place back up to a safe and social place and then back up and down, that there's a rhythm to it. We're not always perfect. This doesn't exist. So is that kind of what you're talking about with the pendulation?
So if people are thinking, okay, I'll have a go at sitting with some of this, I guess just bring to where the safest way to do it.
And sitting with it is not easy. So and especially for someone who doesn't buy into any level of meditation whatsoever, and I'm honestly, there's a part of me that's kind of there. I don't like to sit and just do things generally. I'm a pretty active person. Even when I sit in meetings, Mercedes, I'm always moving, right?
Yes.
Bugging people.
It's very distracting.
I'm also very rushed. I hate meetings. But some people, they're not going to sit still and close their eyes. That is just not going to happen. It's not a safe experience whatsoever. So I think that pendulation, we can take the same idea and apply it to if you're in a place in your movement. Like if you know that cooking for you is a safe thing to do, then that's your safe place. Maybe not in your body, but it's something my body does. Or playing basketball, or writing, drawing. For me, I love drawing. That's my safe place. But if you're in a place that is more difficult to handle and you feel yourself going there, but you're not ready to go all the way there, cool. Go do your safe thing. Come back to the negative stuff a little bit when you're like, just dip your toe in there, just a little bit at a time. You don't have to do the full on, meditation or the full on like I'm going to sit here in the dark with my tissues ready to roll. Like you don't have to do that. Just little by little and build your capacity to handle the more difficult to handle feelings. So I think we can use pendulation the same way, going back and forth.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really important, I think, just in general as single parents, to really understand what is it that helps us to feel safe in terms of daily activities. And like you say, cooking, like a lot of people love that. So just really being in the moment and cherishing that experience to bring you back up.
This is what I would encourage them to do, though, is that there's things that you like, but the challenge then is to notice how you feel when you're doing them. Don't just do them out of habit. Like, I know I like to draw, so I'll go draw, but it's like, no. What's the experience of drawing like? Like, how does especially my torso to my gut, what is my nervous system feeling while I do this? And if I change it up and draw faster, how does that affect my nervous system? Like, how does that feel? And you'll feel these little things in your body, like in your gut or in your chest. Your breathing might change. So whatever it is that you're drawn to, like really notice, what is it like to experience this thing? And don't just do it out of habit. And I think we do that a lot with music. We just listen to music for some reason. This is the music I'm drawn to. I don't really know why, but I keep coming back to it. But if you really pay attention, like how does my body feel while I'm listening to this music? It unlocks something. At least for myself, that music is another kind of portal for me to get to a safe and social place. That if I look, and sometimes silence is better than music for me. So if I go from silence to like more heavy metal music to like more melodic, oldies kind of music, that I can work my way up into feeling more connected with my kids or just in my day. But notice the experience of the things that you're drawn to.
Yeah, thank you. Mercedes, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
One other layer of it that I was thinking about, just kind of incorporating everything that Justin said, is there can be, I don't know what the right word would be to say, I guess speeds to an activity. So, for example, cooking, one of my activities that I've mentioned before on our podcast is weeding. I like to go into the garden and like pull weeds and kind of tend to my yard. And so there's kind of different speeds. So I'm thinking of cooking, for example. You can cook something that's a little bit more slow and a little bit more soothing, maybe like a baking project or something. Or you can go crazy and do some like like what would be something that you chop a lot? I don't know, like I keep thinking of chicken teriyaki. I don't know why.
Onions?
Like lots more action, like onions. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, kind of notice that too, like what you're drawn to within your activity. Justin used the example of, drawing a little bit more slowly or a little bit faster, using faster strokes while drawing. So kind of using that as a cue, I think, to identify your state or to identify what your body needs or wants to do. I don't know. I guess I just wanted to add that.
That makes sense. No, but from a place of curiosity. Like
from a place of curiosity.
If I make this change, if I cut the carrot faster or whatever, I don't know. How does that feel? Like, what's the experience for me? If I feel like pressured and I don't like the way that feels, like, okay, let's try something else. If you slow it down,
right.
And like for me, I think if I was to cut a carrot slowly, there's something kind of cool about the sensation. Like there's like a little resistance, but you can kind of go through it, and then there's like the sound, and then it goes like when it hits the the board.
Yeah.
Like the whole. If you don't stop and like
that.
Really, if you don't slow down and really notice the experience of it, you'll miss out. Like you're just doing all you're doing, like you're just cutting. But you're not doing, like you're not being in the moment. And that's really kind of what we're talking about, I think, is to come from a place of curiosity, be in the moment, and really like how do these things really affect my nervous system is what we're talking about, really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, curiosity, like you say, is so important. So coming at this, like you're saying, with a sense of curiosity, and that immediately can begin to shift how we're feeling because we're coming out of it and exploring it rather than feeling lost in it.
Exactly.
And something else that I just want to finish with, something that you said, Mercedes, was that these feelings don't last forever. And I think it's so important to begin to understand that, because so often we can be left in feeling so overwhelmed and am I going to feel like this for the rest of my life, because the feelings just feel so stuck and powerful. But when we can begin to understand this a little bit, then wow, I can just feel my body just go, oh, okay, this is here right now, but this isn't going to last. Yeah.
No feeling is permanent. Feelings are temporary. And, the more we work on ourselves and the more we work on being curious about the state that we're in and what our body is trying to tell us, I think that will help each of us to kind of move through the heavier and more negative feelings that we're going through, especially single parents. I just want to be clear that I admire single parents. You guys are soldiers and warriors, because I have a lot of people in my family and friends that are single parents, and I struggle with my husband, like with him, and that's a separate thing. But I'm saying, you get what I'm saying. Like, we're parenting together, and it still feels like it's really difficult and it's a struggle. And single parents, my hat to you, because it's hard. And so just be kind to yourself. And it's not going to feel like this forever, but the more kindness you can give to yourself and others, and that includes the ex, the easier it will be over time to get through some of this stuff. Just be kind and curious.
Yeah, kind and curious. I like that. Justin, any thoughts you'd like to add as we finish?
About permanent? No feelings permanent. But the feeling's not just the feeling. The feeling comes from your autonomic state. So if you're in a shutdown place, it's going to feel like depression and numbness. If you're in a fight place, it's going to feel like aggression and anger and rage. And if you're in a flight place, it's going to feel like anxiety and hypervigilance or whatever. So it's not just the feeling. It comes from your autonomic nervous system state. So the trick here is to come, again, from curiosity and to treat yourself as a friend. And it sounds super corny, I know, but it's really like that's how we treat friends, is we get to know them little by little, right? We don't just launch into all of our stuff off the bat. No, you get to know each other little by little out of curiosity. So I would treat yourself the same way. And that doesn't, I'm not asking anyone to fix themselves. I'm asking someone to, because I don't think you're broken in the first place, but I would ask people to just treat themselves with enough love and respect to where the judgment can kind of be put away a little bit. Start there, check in with yourself out of love and curiosity. And then I believe, and if you listen to the Polyvagal podcast, it's going to help you out even more. But I think that, it's a little plug there. I do think that you'll be able to work your way up. Yeah. Work your way up. That really was shameless. You'll work your way up to a more safe and social place. And if you can do that, then the difficult things like handling the ex is going to become easier for you. It doesn't fix the situation, but when you're in a safe and social place, you're just able to handle things easier. It's not as overwhelming. It's not something you want to run away from or fight. It's just like, here's the situation. I can handle this. I can focus on the priorities, and things just become more manageable. So I don't think things are permanent. I don't think that your feelings are permanent. I know there's tons of hope there, but it comes from genuine curiosity first.
Yeah. And actually, just one more thing that I wanted to pick up on, which you mentioned there, which is so, so important, and maybe you could expand on just a little bit, is this sense that we're not broken, that we are whole. Can you say a little bit more?
That's really, really, really important to me, that when we go down into these defensive states of flight, fight, or shutdown, that it's normal. It's a normal reaction to loss, or to grieving what you have lost, or to being attacked. Like it's a if you're in an abusive situation, that it's a normal response to your environment, or at least what you perceive your environment, the perception of threat level of the environment. But it is possible to get stuck in a flight, fight, or shutdown state. So people, I think, that are more in a depressive shutdown state, they feel like they're broken, that there's something wrong with them. And, they get diagnosed and they get medicated. And of course they feel like, and people like me tell them there's a chemical imbalance, or that they're somehow genetically born different. And so, yeah, they're left with this impression that they're broken or defective. And no, you're not. You're stuck in a defensive state. And to me, that's a lot more hopeful than there's something wrong with you, which I simply don't believe that.
Yeah.
I think kind of touching on another point that we were talking about earlier, the I'm broken thing. I'm broken. I'm defective. It's my fault. That whole thing. It goes back to that's a story.
Yeah.
And the stories aren't usually true, and it's a really difficult. And this is something I've personally been kind of battling with myself, is the stuck, not broken thing.
Totally.
It's just like Justin said. This is what your body is going through, and there's a reason for that. That it doesn't mean you're broken, and it doesn't mean something's wrong with you and you're not defective. This is the experience you're having. There is a very specific reason why you're having this experience, and it is what it is. And the story of being broken, it just makes it more difficult to go through and to move out of it, because then you're like labeling yourself with something a little bit more permanent. You're broken, and it's just inaccurate. So stuck, not broken, and becoming unstuck is something very doable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. That has just been so, so, so helpful. And I hope everyone at home I'm sure has benefited so much from this.
I hope people have found some value. I think that's what we say on our podcast.
It is, yeah.
But I hope
a direct and positive influence.
Yes. Thank you. And for everyone listening at home, the reason I know about these two amazing people is because they have the most incredible podcast called the Polyvagal podcast. And we touched on this slightly today, this polyvagal theory. And I really, really encourage you to go and find that podcast, because the first, I think, 9 episodes really go very deeply into what polyvagal theory is, how we experience it, and then you go off and explore how that then
I think
different areas of our lives.
The first 9 are very information based, but Mercedes comes on in episode 10 and it just gets way better. But
of course,
in episode 16, 17, 18, she and I do talk about a lot more of this stuff. I wasn't trying to shamelessly plug the podcast, but if they listen to it, there's hours and hours and hours worth of information. So there's a lot more that we go into, really kind of a lot of this stuff. So I do just like you said, I appreciate Carla-Jo, you really hyping up the podcast like that. Thank you.
So I hope you found that useful. Lots and lots to reflect on there. And I hope this has enabled you to begin to see how it's completely normal to have feelings of anger, fear, grief, and that our minds then create stories and thoughts around what our bodily state is. So as we can begin to see all of this more, become more curious, cultivate more care and kindness around our experience, then we begin to free ourselves from the sense of suffering. And as Justin and Mercedes talked about, we come into this more of a state of what's known as this safe and social state, so that then we are able to respond much more wisely to ourselves and to others, rather than from a place of fear or anger or shutdown. If you have any questions around what Mercedes and Justin and I have spoken about today, then please do get in touch. My details are in the description, and actually I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to get a discussion going around this, so do get in touch, and I really look forward to having more discussions with people who I think are really inspirational and doing amazing work in the field of mental and emotional health.